Tack bästa deltagare i det här webbinariet om landsbygdsfrågor. Hyvät elämän maaseudun ystävät, dear participants in this webinar. Tack för möjligheten att prata här. Thank you for the possibility to speak at this webinar. Firstly, a personal reflection. The countryside is extremely important for me. It represents my childhood, it represents my background, and it represents my current life with my family on our farm today. I am in the lucky situation that my home is roughly 100 kilometers from Helsinki, and my decision has been to commute in order to keep the daily contact with my family, of course, but also with the countryside during my years as a member of parliament and also now as a minister. And the COVID pandemic has to some degree also made it possible and necessary for us ministers to work on distance. I think that the topic of this seminar is extremely timely and important. In my view, it is very important to learn from one another, to share best practices, and to do benchmarking between countries. We have a lot to share and learn between the Nordic countries. The 5 countries are similar in many ways, but also different. And as we know, we can learn both from similarities and from differences. I was pleased to hear that this webinar has attracted interest also from beyond the Nordic sphere. Jag ska här nu som följande nämna några ord om det nordiska samarbetet, dels på grund av att vi nu i det nordiska ministerrådet har en ganska ny strategi och en vision för samarbete, och dels eftersom Finland det här året har haft det roterande ordförandeskapet i Nordiska ministerrådet. Ett ordförandeskap som här i årsskiftet går över till Norge. I am in my current position responsible for Nordic cooperation, and Finland holds the presidency of the Nordic Council of Ministers this year. The Nordic Prime Ministers outlined a new vision for our Nordic cooperation in 2019, that the Nordic region will become the most sustainable and integrated region in the world by 2030. This means becoming a greener, more competitive, and more socially sustainable Nordic region. These 3 broad goals has also guided our work as Finland chairs the Nordic Council of Ministers this year. The Nordic Council of Ministers has 11 different sectoral constellations in addition to the cooperation ministers who are tasked with the overall coordination of the cooperation. As you can imagine, with the multitude of areas covered, there are a great deal of actions and initiatives across various sectors. The objective of working towards a greener Nordic region includes many types of measures. The Finnish presidency has particularly emphasis on initiatives that support the transition towards carbon neutrality and a circular and bio-based economy. One of our specific presidency projects promotes Nordic networks for circular economy in the construction sector. For me, the vital issue with respect to the green transition is having a broad and comprehensive approach. No single action nor any separate policy tool alone will solve the challenge. We need a broad range of actions, both public and private, across sectors, all striving towards more sustainable solutions. In the new restart of our societies after the pandemic, we in the EU, as well as in many other countries decided that the restart will be green, and that also digitalization is an important part of this. Bioeconomy is an important part in the green transition, and bioeconomy very much relies on work, raw material, and products from the countryside. A green transition offers business opportunities for companies and in areas such as the circular economy, energy supply, and the bioeconomy in the Nordic countries. These opportunities, in combination with multi-locality, means that green transition provides a huge opportunity for the countryside. With these words, I thank you for your attention, and I wish you all a fruitful and interesting webinar today. Thank you. Tack ska ni ha.
Thank you so much, Mr. Thomas Blomqvist. Tack så mycket. It was a pleasure that you could have the possibility to join us here, and I hope that also you have a possibility to perhaps listen to the whole seminar, because we are also recorded, so perhaps you can pick up some things that have been mentioned here later today. I know that you have to move to the Parliament for a session there. So thank you so much for your taking part in our webinar and for your greetings here.
Thank you.
Best luck. Thank you. Tack så mycket. Tyvärr så måste ministern rusa vidare till Finlands riksdag. Det finns andra ärenden som är på hans agenda, men förhoppningsvis så kan han lyssna på vad vi har sagt här senare under webbinariet, eftersom vi då också bandade. As I said, we are recording it because there will be some possibility to listen to this webinar about 2 weeks after this webinar, but due to this GDPR restriction, we cannot have it later. So if you want to spread it, so you know it's only in 2 weeks. Now we will move on to Nordregio, and I see already Anna Karlsdotter here. Välkommen, Anna Karlsdotter från Nordregio. We will go on this Nordic level as a whole, och vi ska höra vad som är aktuellt när det gäller forskningen från en nordiskt perspektiv. And the next speaker, Anna Karlsdotter, will talk about the research at the Nordic level and also in connection to especially the rural development. So please, you have the floor.
Yes, hello everybody, and thank you for inviting me for this important seminar. My name is Anna Karlsdotter, and I'm a senior research fellow at Nordregio. And I have also the privilege of leading the Nordic thematic group of green and inclusive rural development in 2021 to 2024. Now, most of you hopefully know that Nordregio is established by Nordic Council of Ministers, is an international research institution conducting research on regional development and planning issues. And we have some commissioned work from the Nordic Council of Ministers in 3 thematic groups that cover rural aspects, urban aspects, and entrepreneurship and innovation, regional resilience, etc. And so one of these thematic groups is focusing on rural development, and it's named in this program period in the Nordic Council of Ministers Green and Inclusive Rural Development. And it's constituted by 19 members from all of the respective Nordic countries, as well as the autonomous regions, Åland, Faroe Islands, and Greenland. And we have a 4-year work ahead of us in the beginning of its program period. And in this special program period, our role has been described, or the aim of our work is to produce and enhance knowledge and share experiences and learning within the varieties of rural areas hosted in the Nordic countries on overarching and specific issues that are challenges for regional development and planning in immediate time horizon and long-term development. And this also serves a very concrete aim in a way, because the reason why we are doing this is to strengthen cooperation in policy-related research, develop and promote solutions that support fulfilling the visions and the regional the visions of the Nordic cooperation and the regional sector's input and priorities in the Nordic cooperation from a rural angle. So what we do in this group is we discuss and hopefully develop valuable input to policymakers in the end, and planners at national, regional, local, and cross-border level. And so we develop and plan for green and inclusive rural areas across the Nordic region. So I'm going to go through some of all the projects that we are involved in at this point in time. And we got this special in this program period, we were only to work with 2 projects in the first part of the period, and then in the latter part of the period to work with 2. But it became more numerous because, of course, there's a variety of issues that are very important to rural areas and development. And the first one that is I think continuously a major issue for future of rural areas is access to services. And this work has a longer storyline than only for this period. We started already in last program period looking into geographical disparities of services by trying to link a grid map kilometer by kilometer and by road distance to map out access to different services. So our project now that is called as Essential Services in the Nordic Region, Challenges and Opportunities, grows actually out of work in previous Nordic working group on sustainable rural areas. And that work was kind of a pilot and was produced in a Nordic service mapper that you can access and actually measure and compare situation in between regions and municipalities in a way. I think it's a nice tool to see where there are commonalities and where there are differences, even if, of course, these kind of tools always have limitations. These, for instance, do not show distances by sea, or so it's only road distances that are kind of calculated within this tool. But for now, the work focuses on essential services, and one of the aims of the current project is to define in the Nordic context with the different Nordic ruralities what are essential services, and how can rural policy be utilized to support essential service needs. What are the future service needs in rural areas? What are the key challenges and what are the key opportunities? Another very big project that we have is a project on green transition, and as you heard from Thomas Blomqvist, the minister, this is high on the agenda. We have the climate negotiations ongoing, and we have also actually a new, and we really need to actually improve Nordic cooperation on all fronts, also in terms of learning from each other on what are the challenges, key challenges and potentials related to green transition in also in rural areas. So the perspective of the project that we are now actually developing will be on local benefits from value creation, and trying to answer the question of how we navigate on bringing results beneficial to rural regions in this process of transition. And rural areas can play a very important role in the green transition as far as most natural resources are located there. But there is this risk that the rural areas end up working merely as instrument to national and international agendas and as engines for the urban areas without any local benefits for the rural communities and rural populations. So the question here is also, how can national and global value added in the form of green progression from the rural areas also translate into concrete local added value in the places where the value is generated? And of course, when we try to scope this, both the sort of different national priorities on green transition issues, we already see that the prospects of rural implication driven by green transition efforts are both multiple and numerous. And as a matter of fact, according to Nordic studies, in a range of areas, the transition will affect rural areas more than large urban areas. And this is due to various factors. A number of the businesses that will be hardest hit are to high extent located in rural areas. Educational level in many rural areas is generally lower, while there are also in some of the Nordic regions more elders among the rural population. Taxes on fossil fuels will impact mobility negatively, which can not be weighed up by support to electric cars and collective transport. And there may be risk for continuous and partly geographically contingent cultural gap between climate activists and food producers. And the Nordic cooperation has recommended that this rural-urban balance becomes an independent focus area in the climate politics in all of the Nordic countries. And to this end, I think I will support Mr. Blomqvist's view on the focus. Regional policies and business policies in the Nordic cooperation should focus on supporting the trends and mechanisms that open potentials for rural areas. And this will involve looking into green technology, circular economy, greater national self-sufficiency, and the democratization of energy production. And as far as we are in this work, we are just only developing the project frame. We've suggested that we focus on land use planning combined with generating what jobs are being generated from the transition, combined with need for skills enhancements generated out of the transition. But it's actually remains to be seen if that turns out to be the focus, because this is actually what our group will discuss in Helsinki in an upcoming meeting later in November. And we have a sister project that is or more on the social aspects of green transition, perception of more marginalized groups, and then another more economically focused project that is focusing on distribution distributional effects of climate policy. And then we've just finalized a project on local ownership and transition towards sustainable energy systems with focus on Sweden. One of the top priorities for the Finnish chairmanship has been a multi-locality, and of course, as an effect out of COVID and increased working from home, we've seen maybe some kind of trend emerge in a shift in values towards this combination of work and home and location, and maybe preferences for living. So we have a cross-thematic project on rural and regional impacts of remote work and multi-locality, and as of now they are completing a Nordic knowledge overview, and the preliminary findings include that what they found so far from different Nordic studies is that there is an overall sentiment towards continuing remote working after well, COVID hopefully leaves us in, but there are, of course, quality of life concerns on well-being, and a key concern is actually work environment. Will this mean some more balanced regional development? Remains to be seen. There are some equality implications, maybe not as severe in the Nordic countries as in other industrialized countries with less equality measures in place. And there are still legal and administrative barriers to take into account. And then, of course, there is the aspect of environmental sustainability. What will this mean? Now, as subtask, but an important task associated to this is that we want to renew the rural-urban typology that we have used so far, and we are inspired by Sika, the Finnish institution that has developed a new classification. What we will do is that we will develop a kilometer-to-kilometer grid-based urban-rural typology that is not dependent on these conventional administrative boundaries that the usual typologies are, but it will more suitably describe settlement and mobility patterns in each Nordic country. So this is an ongoing work. We are working with a Finnish company that is programming this work, Upico it's called. And we very much hope that in the early spring, we can have a workshop with the Nordic experts that we gather to bring more legitimacy to this work, because as we know, some of these rural urban typologies are really used as tools in planning, so they can have a very they can have a determinate effect on how things are classified for policies implemented. Now, other projects that are kind of beyond our group is a very important project, the Sherpa project on multi-level governance and rural policies. That's Nordiskt has been part of that with responsible for working on establishing a multi-level governance platform in Finland and Denmark. And now this project is sort of half into its period, and Sweden and Estonia, I think Estonia are will also be part of this project in the continued period. And Ann-Sophie knows this because she's actually part of, well, she's both representative in among the members in the thematic group, but she's absolutely also a very important partner in the Sherpa project. So this project brings together different actors for a discussion and development of long-term vision for rural areas in Europe. And it's researchers from universities and other institutions and consultancies, it's local action groups, it's civil society organizations, it's politicians, and it's producer organizations. So it's I think it's a very fruitful forum that you are creating in the Sherpa, Ann-Sophie, and one that absolutely the Nordic cooperation can feed into the Nordic cooperation, and we can learn from this project, even if it has this European scope. Another project that also came out of the Nordic thematic group on rural development was a cooperation project with the Danish Center for Regional and Tourism Research in Bornholm, Denmark, where we, as a result from work that we had been doing on tourism development, we decided that there has been for too long time too much focus solely on measuring economic effects of tourism, whereas social and environmental impacts are sort of have for too long time been in the shadows in terms of measuring progress for rural areas. So we've been doing a work where we're trying to develop a indicator tool along with the Danish destination organizations on that focuses on needs of rural and coastal areas among the Danish destinations, and looks into grasping the sort of local benefits and sustainable aspects of development. And in addition, there are many other projects that we are and have been involved in that relate to rural areas and Nordic cooperation. We have conducted quite a number of COVID and labor market related studies, also in relation to integration issues. There have been and are still ongoing bioeconomy and maritime related studies. And then we have digitalization projects that have been completed, and actually now quite a big 5G project that encompasses also the Baltic neighbors these are in focus, closely linked to rural areas. And I think I will stop here. But on a personal note, I think the comparativeness that this sort of cooperation enables helps is really sort of the big learning moment for me, and I hope also for the members. Thank you. You're muted.
No, yes, thank you so much, Anna Karlsdottir, for sharing all this important research there are a lot of thematic issues, as you notice. And if you have questions, please post them now in the chat, because I think we will go on. And before the break, we will keep up with all these questions. But thank you so much. Tack så mycket, Anna. And I also wanted to say that these PowerPoints will be, you can look at them afterwards also. So you have the, so if you didn't have time to write down things that you wanted to write down, so there are possible to read them after. Så tack så mycket, Anna. Och också för de här alla vänliga orden. Tack så mycket. Det är jätteintressant att vara både med i Sherpa och i Nordregiogruppen. My plan was to categorize the Nordic countries. So the next speaker will be from Sweden and Denmark, because Sweden and Denmark are both a member of the Nordic family, if I say so, but they are also a member of the European Union. So now we will go on, or we will travel, if I say travel this way, first to my neighbor country, Sweden, to Ulrika Holmgren. She's coming from the Swedish Rural Network. Från det svenska landsbygdsnätverket har vi då Ulrika Holmgren från följande. Är du där, Ulrika?
Ja, men jag är här. Hej Ann-Sofie och hej alla ni andra.
Ja, jättevarmt välkommen Ulrika. Och
tack.
Ordet är ditt, och jag har förstått att du pratar svenska, men du har och PowerPointen på engelska.
Ja, alltså det var ju ett önskemål att jag skulle prata svenska, och min PowerPoint är på svenska, men jag tror att ni har även översatt den till engelska, så att den kommer att finnas på engelska efteråt. Då är vi överens, va?
Ja.
Då ska jag ta och...
And we will have the possibility to also have the PowerPoint in English. Yes.
Så där, nu har jag delat skärm. Jag hoppas att ni ser den i visningsläge. Stämmer det, Ann-Sofie?
Ja.
Perfekt, det är en bra början. Jag heter då Ulrika Holmgren och arbetar på det svenska landsbygdsnätverket som samordnare. Och då kan man säga att det är 3 huvudområden som jag arbetar med. Det är LIDER, det är innovationsfrämjande i landsbygder och det är smarta landsbygder. Och idag så kom Ann-Sofie och jag överens om att jag ska lägga mitt huvudfokus på vårt arbete med smarta landsbygder. Men innan jag kommer in på det så tänkte jag att jag ska börja med att lite grann berätta för er vad svenska landsbygdsnätverket är och vad det är vi gör och hur vi fungerar. Och då är det så att vi är ett nätverk som består utav någonstans 110 till 120 medlemmar. Och medlemmarna är alla de är nationella organisationer och myndigheter. Men det kan vara ideella föreningar, ideella organisationer, men det kan också vara organisationer som representerar näringslivet. Exempelvis har vi företagarna med oss. Och det är medlemmarna som bestämmer vad det är Svenska landsbygdsnätverket ska göra. Och det gör de genom att vi vartannat år så gör vi en stor medlemsundersökning. Vi går ut till alla medlemmar och frågar: vad vill ni att vi ska jobba med? Vad tycker ni att det finns poäng med att vi gör tillsammans? Och det har vi precis genomfört nu, så nu är vi inne i våra aktivitetsplaner för 2021 till 2022. Och då landar det i ungefär den här bilden över vår aktivitetsplan, vad vi ska göra. Och då ser ni att här har vi med lokalt ledd utveckling. Det är ju någonting som är, kan jag säga, både vi vill jobba med men också är styrt för landsbygdsnätverk att man ska jobba med. Men vi ska också jobba med ungas delaktighet. Vi jobbar med kompetensplattformar. Vi jobbar med gröna näringar. Vi arbetar med EIP Agri med support till det, och vi jobbar med någonting som heter mattanken. Det är att främja maten i de offentliga köken. Och så har vi då smarta landsbygder. Och hela målsättningen med, ska vi se så jag flyttar här, med landsbygdsnätverket, det är ju att vi ska få våra medlemmar att samarbeta med varandra, lära av varandra, och utbyta erfarenheter för att komma vidare i de mål som vi har satt upp tillsammans. Och då trattar vi in till ett av de målen som vi har satt upp. Vi ska ju då nu fokusera på det mål som vi har för smarta landsbygder. Och då ser ni att då har vår styrgrupp formulerat det här målet för aktivitetsplaner vi har nu. Det vill säga att våra medlemsorganisationer, de ska lära varandra, som jag nämnde, och de ska samarbeta mer. Och det ska de göra för att utveckla och sprida kunskaper som underlättar att fler är engagerade i utvecklingen utav smarta landsbygder. Ja, det är ju ett ganska brett mål det här. Det är mycket att ta tag i. Och hur har vi då gått tillväga? Jo, då är det ju så att för alla insatsområden, alla mål som vi har, så bildar vi då arbetsgrupper. Vi går ut med en efterlysning bland våra medlemmar och säger att nu ska vi arbeta med smarta landsbygder. Vem vill vara med och jobba med det här? Och då får vi in medlemsorganisationer, och i arbetsgruppen för smarta landsbygder så har vi med då representanter för LIDER. Hela Sverige ska leva, kanske ni känner till. Men vi har också med från kommuner, från regioner, från länsstyrelser. Vi har med från SLU, Sveriges landsbygdsuniversitet. Så att det är en ganska stor bredd i arbetsgruppen som ska liksom ta sig an det här målet. Och då är det så att den här arbetsgruppen vi har nu för smarta landsbygder, de har faktiskt hållit på i 2 år redan. Och då tänkte jag vi ska kika lite grann på vad det är de redan har gjort. Här är en sån här underbar bild som kanske inte är helt lätt för er att se och angripa, men jag ska förklara den och sen så kan ni grotta ner i den lite ytterligare när ni får den efter konferensen. När vi började arbetet så satte sig arbetsgruppen och funderade på vem är målgruppen för vårt arbete och vad vill vi uppnå med att jobba med den här målgruppen. Och man landade ganska snabbt i att för att försöka främja utvecklingen av smarta landsbygder så måste vi arbeta på 3 olika nivåer. Vi måste börja jobba på lokal nivå, genomförande nivå. Det är ju där alla fantastiska människor finns som ser till att det blir smarta landsbygder, och vi måste fundera, vad kan vi göra för att underlätta så att alla lokala aktörer har bra verktyg, metoder, stöd, hjälp för att de ska kunna utveckla smarta landsbygder. Men vi såg också att vi behöver jobba på den regionala och lokala eller kommunala nivån, där vi har möjliggörarna, de som är smörjmedlet som stöttar den lokala nivån. Där såg man att det är väldigt viktigt att både kommunal verksamhet och regional verksamhet i sitt planarbete dockar an till det arbete som sker lokalt. Alltså det får inte ske i täta skott emellan, utan de måste samspela på ett bättre sätt. Och slutligen så såg man då att på den nationella nivån så behöver vi också göra saker, alltså underlätta bland annat då så att smarta landsbygdsprojekt eller smarta landsbygdsstrategier blir möjliga att bland annat finansiera. Och i mittenraden på den här lilla modellen här så ligger det ett antal ljusblåa fält, och här ligger då alla de aktiviteter som vi har genomfört. Vi började med att titta på en definition. Den är liksom övergripande för det nationella arbetet. Vi försökte verka på olika sätt med att få in programskrivning i så hög utsträckning som möjligt. Exempelvis i CAP-planen eller den strategiska planen så jobbade vi med den förvaltande myndigheten Jordbruksverket så att det verkligen skulle komma in skrivningar om smarta landsbygder i den strategiska planen. Kopplat till det så hade vi även då en workshop för alla skrivargrupper som håller på att ta fram LIDER-strategier och gav dem tips och idéer och tankar kring indikatorer man kan använda, texter man kan lägga in för att om det fanns intresse, att de skulle kunna skriva in smarta landsbygder i sina kommande leaderstrategier för 2023 till 2027. På regional nivå så hade vi en aktivitet som heter flerfondssamverkan. Då var det våra representanter från kommun och region som sa att men det här, alltså det är alldeles för ofta som kommunerna gör sitt planarbete, regionen gör sitt planarbete och sen de här lokala utvecklingsgrupperna, de kommer liksom inte in. Dockar inte in och går inte hand i hand med det som kommunen gör. Så där arrangerade vi då dels en podd och sedan 3 stycken workshoppar. Vi ville också tydliggöra och sprida smarta landsbygder i så hög utsträckning som möjligt. Och på lokal nivå så började vi jobba med någonting som heter metod 3.0. Jag kommer att komma in på den lite närmare här. Och vi spred goda exempel och vi var också engagerade i Smart Rule 21. Så där, om vi nu går ner nu lite konkret exempel på vad vi gjorde då på lokal nivå, så var bakgrunden till det att flera av våra medlemmar, bland annat har vi med då från Omställningsnätverket och Hela Sverige ska leva som jag nämnde. De sa att i Sverige har vi haft någonting som heter lokala utvecklingsplaner, en metod för det. Man tyckte att den behövde fräschas upp. Vi började prata om att försöka utveckla en metod 3.0. Och vi landade till slut i att det kanske inte är en metod 3.0 för det finns väldigt många bra olika metoder. Utan det här handlar mer om att åskådliggöra att det lokala arbetet är ett kretslopp och att tydligare få in omställningstankar i detta. Och att man kan hoppa in när man vill och sen länkar vi vidare till alla de bra metoder som finns och som kommer komma vidare. Så det här ligger nu på Landsbygdsnätverkets webbsida och ni ser att jag har länkat upp adressen där. Vi utgår ifrån, som ni ser då, alltså man kan börja med var är vi någonstans? Det är egentligen att göra en nulägesanalys och så har vi tips på metoder på det. Sen är nästa steg, vad vill vi? Då är det att utforma målet, visionen, vad vill man med sitt lokala arbete? Därefter går man vidare med att titta på vad har vi, vad är det för resurser vi har på den här platsen, i den här byn, på den här orten. Och då kan det vara att man använder sig exempelvis utav en LEA, lokal ekonomisk analys. Jag vet inte om det har ni kanske i Finland på, ja, jag ser att Ann-Sofie nickar. Då länkar vi till den. Och sen slutligen så är det ju då att göra själva aktivitets- och handlingsplanen. Vad vill vi göra? Och det här ser ju väldigt olika ut för olika byar var man är. En del kanske redan har gjort en jättebra nulägesanalys. Då behöver man ju inte börja där. Då börjar man med vad vill vi? Så är den här konceptet upplagt. Och vi lanserade detta i mars och började med att ha ett webbinarium där David från Omställningsnätverket som var ansvarig för att ta det här drog detta. Och sen ska vi då gå vidare. En annan del vi gjorde ganska tidigt var också att gruppen sa att någonting som efterlyses ofta av lokala grupper, det är att man inte vet var man ska hitta pengar eller var man ska hitta råd. Det är svårt att komma fram i djungeln. Gruppen sa bland annat att vi skulle behöva ha någonting som heter verksamt.se fast för byutveckling i Sverige. Jag vet inte, känner ni till verksamt.se i Sverige? Det är ju liksom riktat mot företagande som är en jättebra webbsida med väldigt, väldigt mycket matnyttig information. Och det var egentligen det gruppen ville ha för byutveckling och det kanske inte vi har tillräckligt kraft och det kanske inte det vi ska göra. Men man började ändå göra en skanning som man delade upp regionalt och titta på vad finns det i pengar, vad finns det i olika typer av stöd, vad finns det för rådgivning så att den som har en idé kan gå in och titta, ja men här kan jag kanske få lite hjälp att börja med. Sen har vi de goda exemplen som jag tror vi alla, det kommer ju hela tiden upp och det är så nyttigt och så bra att det är ett ständigt pågående arbete att lyfta fram de här bra exemplen på byar, på smarta landsbygder som andra kan läsa om, lära och bli inspirerade av. Så det har vi också börjat med. På regional nivå då, som jag nämnde, så hade vi aktiviteten flernivåsamverkan där vi då hade 3 stycken workshoppar. Den första var för tjänstepersoner i kommuner, den andra var för tjänstepersoner i regioner och den tredje, då tussade vi ihop dem där vi försökte samla upp vad behöver de för att kunna vara bra möjliggörare för smarta landsbygder. Och de lärdomarna som kom fram där sammanställde vi och har dokumenterat, skickat ut till alla deltagare såklart, men också publicerat på webb och vi ska fortsätta det arbetet. Här är bara kort som jag nämnde, guiden till programskrivning för skrivargrupper. Där hade vi workshop med och det var väl tror jag, 70-tal personer från skrivargrupper som var med och fick olika tips på argument. Dels hade vi också med från personer som berättar om vikten av att ha en lokal ekonomisk analys, hur bra det är att det kan finnas bygdebolag i orter, alltså argumenten för varför vill vi få till ett arbete i smarta landsbygder så att skrivargrupper känner att det är motiverat att få in det. Ja, och då kommer vi in nu vad vi ska göra 2021 till 2022, för att det är ju väldigt, väldigt mycket vi gjorde från december 2019 till våren 2021 här. Men gruppen fortsätter ju nu och man fortsätter som ni ser att titta på de här 3 nivåerna, nationell nivå, regional, lokal nivå och sen då lokal genomförandenivå. Vi kommer att fortsätta med att jobba med den här levande bygder 3.0. Och det vi ska göra nu, vi har ju sett det som att det är som en slags pilot. Den är ju inte färdig på något sätt utan nu ska vi testa det konceptet och någon i gruppen kommer att vara stöd till någonstans. Vi hoppas att vi kan få till 3 stycken bygder som vill testa konceptet och ta fram en smart landsbygdsstrategi. Vi är engagerade i Smart Rural 21 som fortfarande pågår, men vi är även med i Smart Rural 27 som handlar om lite mer policypåverkan, men också där att ta fram goda exempel på smarta landsbygder. På regional nivå, lokal nivå, där kommer vi att fortsätta med det här arbetet med flernivåsamverkan, men utöka det till att även då inkludera våra länsstyrelser. Förra omgången så fokuserade vi på kommuner och regioner och det samspelet. Nu vill vi få med oss länsstyrelser och lider i den här flernivåsamverkan. Och sen slutligen på nationell nivå och programnivå så har vi en punkt vi kallar kompetensstöd. För faktum är, och det är ju väldigt roligt att vi ser att det är många olika typer av utvärderingar, det är forskningsprojekt och så vidare som på ett eller annat sätt vill titta på det här med smarta landsbygder och då har de hört av sig till vår grupp och frågar om vi vill finnas med som referenspersoner. Så vi har till och med, det är så pass omfattande så vi har lagt in det som en aktivitet nu framgent. Och sen även där har vi då Smart Rural 27 som ska jobba med det här med policypåverkan. Och vi hade möte faktiskt igår så att den här planen, vi är lite sena men det är avstamp nu kan vi säga, ska vi gå igång med detta. Så att det här är det som Svenska landsbygdsnätverket gör med smarta landsbygder. Hur vill du ha, Ann-Sofie? Vill du att vi tar frågor nu eller?
Jag tänkte att vi ännu lyssnar in Steffen och sen så tar vi frågor innan vi tar en kort paus, om det är okej?
Ja, som du vet, jag kommer att pausa. Jag försvinner en liten stund så kommer jag tillbaka.
Okej.
Ja.
Yes.
Bra.
Ja.
Tack.
Tusen tack. Ulrika. Tusen tack. Thank you so much, Ulrika. She was talking about living ruralities and especially smart ruralities. And we will translate also at least some part of her presentations into English, so you can also follow it better in English. But as you perhaps know, at the European level, we also talk about these smart ruralities and smart villages. So of course, this is a very important thematic input in many levels. I mean, at the European level, of course, but also in every national countries, but also in the regional level. And when we come down to especially the local level, how do we really can work with smart ruralities and smart villages in practice? So this is a very interesting topic, I think, and I think it would be really nice to also kind of develop a kind of Nordic project around these smart ruralities. Let's see. But thank you so much, Ulrika. And now we will go on to Denmark, and in Denmark we will have some inputs from some Stefan Damsgaard. He is representing Landsbygdsområdenas fällesråd. Are you there, Stefan? Oh.
Yes, I'm here.
Yes.
And
Ulrika have here. Ulrika, are you there? I think you have to close your screen, or can you, Salla, close it?
Yeah, well, maybe it's not that important, because
okay.
I will try to put you into an experiment. And that experiment is that I'm not gonna show a slideshow and PowerPoint presentation, but afterwards you will have a PowerPoint with a few slides that will show what I was telling you about, and I hope we can make it work that way around. I'm the chairman of the Danish rural organization, the overall rural organization, Landdistrikternes Fællesråd, or Council of Rural Districts, as we call ourselves in English. We are a member-based organization, member-based in a big variety of members. In fact, we have 6 groups of members. We have, for instance, in national organizations or regional organizations that can be a part of the member group. We also have the Danish municipalities, and the overall common things between our members is that they have to apply for membership, and normally there's no contradiction or any problem in being members. But we have the organizations, we have the municipalities, we also have the regions. 4 out of 5 regions is a member of Landdistrikternes Fællesråd. And just to put in perspective how many of our municipalities that are members, that is 55 out of 98. We also have the Danish local action groups, the leader groups, and according to what we just hear about the way of working with smart cities, the Danish local action groups, that's a part of the rural development program. They are also members in Landdistrikternes Fællesråd, together with civil society organizations at rural level. We both have the single villages that are members, but also clusters of villages, maybe even clusters of villages that are having all municipalities, villages into the member base. For instance, one municipality, Viborg, has 92 municipalities, and they have in their organization about 70 of the villages that are active members. So that kind of civil society organizations that are hosting a lot of villages are also a member of group of us. So that's the broad perspective, and That is the member base, that's the board that is elected from that broad variety of members, and that is also what defines our work program. So that's just to put in perspective what we are, what kind of organization we are. I will tell you about the development in Denmark with three main points. The first I will just give a few notes is the trends and what is going on, what we see in the future perspectives. So that's trends, upcoming trends. Number two, that is the civil society, how they work and what they do right now. And number three, that is the framework conditions where our the national government and at certain place also the regional government and also the local government, what they do to create better framework conditions. But I will focus on the national level at that point. What we see in number one, that's trends. What we see in Denmark right now is perhaps what you see all over the Nordic countries, that people have see upon where you live and where you work in a new perspective. Now you have your work, maybe a home workspace, or maybe you are an entrepreneur that is not have to start your work day at a central office or a co-work place that is in the big cities. That is due to that kind of new perspectives in where you work and where you live, is because of the COVID-19 situation where we all were forced to work from our homes, at least all the people that could work from a laptop or a device or something like that. Together with that, the children was educated online. So that was the total turnaround in our society, and I guess in your societies as well. So we see now that people living in the big cities, and that's the first main key point from about trends. People living or have been living in the big cities, and we do not have many big cities in Denmark. They want to move out, and we can see that in the statistics that in fact people are starting. It's a small trend, but it's starting to moving out from the big cities to the rural areas or to the municipalities in the rural areas. And that is due to people looking into themselves. Where is my values best? Where my values in my life, in our family life, where can I have the values best come true? And that is what people now are choosing to live, maybe in a village, maybe in a smaller municipality where you're close to nature, you are close related to your neighbors, but you have a lot of space, so you're not that tight in the big cities or in the where people live closely together. When work is not located to where you live, you have much more possibility to have your own home workspace and work maybe 2 or 3 days from home, and maybe 2 or 3 days you have to meet at the office, at the head office. So you have separated the where to work and where to live in a certain states at least. We also see startups and incubators, environments, co-work communities that start up and develop in and at village level. So we hope the aspiring trends will be even more, maybe not a ruralization, but at least the urbanization is maybe going the other way around. We don't know where we are gonna end, but people are taking are very concerned about where to work and where to live. That is giving a higher meaning in their lives. So that's just a couple of remarks about the trends. Number two, as I said, and that's the civil society. Our civil society in Denmark are very related and very dependent on the fiery souls and the voluntary work that is going on at the civil society organizations in the villages. And of course, the COVID-19 situation has, it has ended up with, and now we see a little bit COVID-19 coming back again, but what we have experienced is that people and the civil society's network in the villages, they try to keep up the spirits among the people living in the villages and made a great effort to people having to feel good and also keep the hope while the COVID-19 situation was very bad. So in that perspective, the civil society organization at village level has played a very big and important role in how the people are feeling and not feeling lonely at the villages and in the rural areas. Now the situation is a little bit different with the COVID-19, and we are glad that COVID-19 is not that tight bonds to our lives more. So what we see is that the activities, the meetings, the arrangements, and all what people did before COVID-19 is coming back again, where you meet in communities, where you meet physically in the local meeting spots at the villages. But still, they are working with how can we get all the people out from their houses again and meet with other people and be socialized again and come together and relate to each other physically again when we are not tied to our homes due to COVID-19. So the civil society plays a great role, and we also see that during the COVID-19, we did not just see a pandemic. We also saw the climate crisis still going on. So what we experience in many villages in Denmark right now is that the villages, the civil society, the fiery souls, the voluntary people like to work with how can we make our village sustainable in many ways. It can be sustainable in how to take care of the climate, water, the more extreme weather situations, or it can be sustainable due to how we can make garbage sorting and things like that sustainable, and how can we come close to the energy production, the green energy production. And that is in fact one of the big issues right now in Denmark, that with 2 or 3 decades with a lot of wind turbines being bigger and built especially at the coastal areas or where there is a lot of wind, Now we see also solar panel parks or big fields of solar panels that a developer wants to create them. Due to a similar thing between the wind turbines, the solar parks, and other energy producing sites is that people have that kind of not in my backyard way of thinking, and that is one of the big issues. Just a few years ago, there was a legislation that made sure that if you were a neighbor to a big wind turbine, you were had the possibility to buy a share of that wind turbine. That legislation has been changed, so now you get a small check every year, and people think that is a kind of paying for me to stop arguing and do not see themselves as the co-owner of a wind turbine or energy producing, a green energy producing site. So if we want the green sustainable development to continue without people going to demonstrate, we need to change the legislation so that people can be co-owners or owners of the energy producing plants, for instance, wind turbines and solar panels or solar parks. So that is one of the things that are very, very top of mind in many villages. The last thing that has been going on since our, and that was number 3, since we had the change in our government, they took extra action on how to decentralize some, or a decentralization of some of our areas, what we can do, what they could do to create more thriving local areas and more thriving municipalities, especially in the rural areas. So in fact, the government has put into action a different or several new initiatives. For instance, they have, at least in Denmark perspective, it is countable and it is visual, but they have created and placed 15 new, and we call them, or they call them, the government, near police stations, and that is police stations that have at least 15 hours of opening hours every week, and they are placed at smaller cities and in some of the municipalities that did not have a situated or located in a police station. The government has also created better conditions for education, and when I say condition for education, that is the further education. So it is after the secondary education. It's the further education. They put out numbers, about 20 education that was placed around Denmark at not the biggest cities, but the middle-sized municipalities and cities, to create better conditions for the youth to have their education, so they did not have to go to the biggest cities. When young people move to take their education in the biggest cities, only between 15 and 20% moves back to the area where they come from or a similar area. And that is an issue when we talk about where the development will be in a long perspective, where people will be situated and what development our country will have. So they have placed more educations, and they have reduced some of the universities' educations in the 5 biggest cities. They have also created the economical frame conditions so that new and furthermore educations can be placed around the country. Also, when we talk about secondary educations, we have experienced that, not just experienced, that the government has put out as a proposal that we can have more youth educations around Denmark, especially in cities that are above 10,000 inhabitants that do not have their own secondary education in placed and situated in their area. So that is also extra education possibilities. The government has continued the broadband amount, about 100 million Danish crowns. Despite the COVID-19 situation, it was almost taken out of the national budget, but as we tried, and we also played a role in the two previous years, that the broadband at 100 million crowns that can finance broadband, where broadband is not economical, interesting for companies. That's the place where they are used, and it is to get the broadband and the 1 gigabyte society that we hope could be the future. It's not the national goal right now. Also, the money spent on renewal of towns, not cities, but towns up to 4,000 people living there, and villages, has been the biggest amount of money, 270 million Danish crowns as national co-financing was the budget for 2021, and almost the same amount of money for the next years. So we are trying to create a renewal of our villages and small towns, and you can tear down some of the baddest, the worst towns. You can give subsidy to people who want to renovate their special houses, and you can also create renewal between the houses. The Danish government also wants to work with how we can create living city centers, also living town centers, so that shops and that could close due to COVID-19 and all the internet commerce, that they create a living civil city center or town center, together with events and other things that make it interesting in making your all your daily when you buy your grocery and other things in shops and not just in internet hand. And then we have the infrastructure plan that also plans on roads and also bicycle, what do you call them? In Denmark, we call them cykelstier. That has also been a big infrastructure plan that was worked with for the last 2 years, that also take the rural areas in account, and also will invest in not just the biggest cities, but also in the peripheral areas and in the rural areas. And the last thing that we have experienced is that the government tried to create or remake some of the small hospitals that was closed due to a big hospital reform that created the super hospitals, as we call them, where you have to go if you have some disease or operation or cancer or anything like that, that needs the best and the experts. But still, if you have a small finger fracture, why do you have to go for 80 kilometers to have your finger put in place again, and things like that. So now they want to create, you could call them health houses, or as the government call them, near hospitals. So I don't know what the word is going to be, and maybe that's not that interesting, but they try to create and make the possibilities for the health and also what do you call it? Sundhedstilbud, sorry to use the Danish word, to have all the sundhedstilbud closer to the people and also to the smaller rural municipalities. And that's the next step in how we create and get the government and also the local government closer to people. So that was going through with the trends, the civil society, and the framework conditions, and how it can work together and hopefully create a better rural life, and also a more sustainable development in where people are living in Denmark. So I think I'll stop here, and I will send you afterwards the presentation with short, brief notes, and you can have it afterwards. Hope you survived this experiment.
Thank you so much. Yes, I think we really survived it, and it was so interesting. Many things I would like to comment myself, but also I will give the chance to the floor also to other comments. But I just wanted to say that I really agree with your trends and also the importance of the civil society that you mentioned. I can feel it also from the Finnish aspect. But the last things that you mentioned, I don't know how many of you really know that we have had and still have a very big social health and hospital reform ongoing in Finland. And when you mention a kind of decentralization of this healthcare and hospital system, my ears opened up and I was listening. I hope also many other people in Finland also can do some benchmarking in this case to Denmark. And then also when you talk about this not in my backyard, I attended myself in a European meeting or seminar some weeks ago. It was about the Green Deal, also from a more rural, regional, cross-border aspect. But the big topic was really not in my backyard. How can we really deal with this when we come to the impacts of these huge solar parks or wind turbines, as you said, and many other things connected to the energy solutions. So this is really a crucial topic, I should say. So I hope we can go on, try to develop something also in cooperation and collaboration in this way. I know Ulrika has another ongoing big meeting also, so we will soon have a break, but I will give the floor the possibility also to address some questions or also comments to Stefan, Ulrika, and Anna here before we take a break. So I hope you can post them here in the chat, and Sala is my backup. Sala from the Finnish Rural Network, she's my backup here today. So she had also posted here some comments already in the chat about the PowerPoints and the other things. But anyway, if there are some comments or questions, so please, you have now the possibility before we take a break. But I want really to thank you once again, Anna, Ulrika, and Stefan, for really interesting presentations already up to now. So is there any comments? Yes, Hanna, do you want to? Yes.
Ja, can I ask in Swedish or?
Yes, you can use Swedish, yes.
Ja, Ulrika, leadergrupperna har ju tagit fram en ny strategi i Sverige. Jag tror de har lämnat in dem nu under oktober. Hur har ni jobbat med, eller har ni ett stöd för leadergrupperna i strategiarbetet?
Ulrika, you are muted.
Yes, I saw that. Ja, nej, men det var precis det jag beskrev, att det var en av de insatserna vi gjorde vi hade i våras i februari, så hade vi en workshop med alla skrivargrupper som höll på att ta fram strategierna. Där vi gav dem inspiration till dels argumenten varför det är viktigt att försöka få in smarta landsbygder i Leader-strategierna, men också tips, idéer, förslag på hur de kan få in det. Om du är inblandad själv så vet du, man kan ju göra det som insatsområde eget, eller du kan använda en indikator, eller du kan till och med göra en röd tråd genom hela strategin. Så att lite olika sätt försökte vi inspirera dem till detta.
Ja. Har ni någonting på webbsidan, har ni någonting, tror du sa?
Ja, alltså vi har ju lagt upp, jag tror jag gjorde en skärmdump på de här workshopparna kring detta, men jag tror det är så på grund av GDPR, precis som för er, vi filmade och la upp det i 2 veckor, men jag tror att vi har plockat ner det.
Ja.
Jag ska se om vi kan ha något bakgrundsmaterial eventuellt. Men jag tittar på, kan inte du skicka ett mejl till min mejladress?
Ja, vad har du för mejladress?
Då har jag ulrika.holmgren. Vi ska se. Nu kuppar jag här lite grann, Sofie.
Ja. Du kan skriva i chatten kanske, Ulrika, din...
Ser ni nu?
Ja, det där ser vi, japp.
Ja, Nordiskt.
Ja. Och där ser ni även webbsidan, startwebbsidan för smarta landsbygder. Där finns nästan allting som vi har gjort. Massa olika tips och tricks och idéer.
Ja. Jag jobbar för en leadergrupp här i finska Tornedalen. Och vi har ju samverkan med Leader Tornedalen på svenska sidan.
Ja. Och
vi håller ju på även att lite väva ihop våra strategier för utökat samarbete i gränsregionen. Så det är därför jag frågar vad det är.
Spännande. Kul, men mejla mig så ska jag se vad jag kan hitta.
Ja, det är det. Tack.
Tack. And Hanna was asking Ulrika about the leader strategy and how to involve smart ruralities and smart villages into the smart, to involve all this thematic in the strategy. So and Hanna is coming from the Finnish part, northern part of the border, and they also cooperate, of course, with the Swedish part. So it was collaboration over the borders. Is there any other questions or comments? It was many things, but we can also remain in the end of the session today to some. So if it's not, I think we could have now 10 minutes break. So and after our break, we will go to Norway and also to Iceland and hear about how they are working with ruralities and also rural development. So please enjoy your coffee or tea or whatever, and then we see each other in 10 minutes. More time. Now, because we have 2 upcoming speakers, and as I said before the break, we will go to Norway and we'll also go to Iceland. And first we will go to Ruralis. It's an institute for rural and regional research in Norway. And I have the pleasure to introduce you to Jonsten Broback. I hope you are here. Please, the floor is yours.
Yes, I'm here. Thank you for the invitation. I'm going to try to share my screen now, see if that works. You all see my presentation first slide now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the invitation and also an interesting seminar on across the border rural topics. I think my presentation might be a little bit different than the previous ones. As you said, I work at Ruralis, which is a research institution situated in Trondheim. I'm a political scientist, and my presentation might reflect that. I'm going to talk a little bit about the broader overall picture in Norway, rural issues and the political situation. and also on some major trends and perhaps concerns. At Ruralis, we're right in the middle of this. Our research areas are linked to the local communities and natural resource management, primary sector business development, and also in municipal and regional policy. And although we have about 20% of our funding comes from the Minister of Agriculture and Food to uphold competence within the rural sociology area. The rest 80% comes from Norwegian Research Council, European Union research programs, etc. So that's the background for my my workplace. As I said, we are situated in Trondheim with around 30 and then we like to say we have a district office in Oslo where 5 persons are located. So today I'm going to talk about a recent wave of rural protests that has grown in both strength and significance. I'm going to talk about a political change that happened this year with the introduction of a new government, and also some major trends and concerns, and I'll see how much of the presentation I can manage within my 20 minutes. First of all, the last 5-6 years we've had a series of rural protests in Norway, and they come from different sources. But these rural protests, they really are a kind of a reaction to larger development trends in Norway taking place the later years. It's both links to the political situation with the big national reforms, but it's also linked to more general development trends, and also to some extent reflects an increased municipal and rural deprivation, relatively speaking. And the foremost symbol of this series of rural protests is what we in Norway call bunadsgerilja. Bunad, that's the Norwegian name for the national costume. And the protest, the bunadsgerilja, as a symbol of rural protest, started in the city of Kristiansund, which is in the northwestern part of Norway. Local women started protesting against a change in the hospital structure and the decision to shut down the maternity ward in Kristiansund. In this region, Trondheim, Molde, and Ålesund is also has a yellow circles here. They also have major hospitals with maternity wards. So from the map, it can seem that the distance between the existing other hospitals are not that far, but increasingly over the last few years, more and more births have been taking place in ambulances from the Kristiansund area and the islands outside of it towards either Molde or Trondheim. And when they decided to shut down the maternity ward in Kristiansund, this spurred a massive local protest. Inspired by that, a series of local rural protests has spread across the country linked to other sectors. And the main drivers of these protests really are the result of our former conservative right-leaning government. They have had the 2 periods, 2013 to 17 and 2017 to this year or last year. And what the former government program was, so it was a series of national reforms within the police, the judicial sector, health sector, defense. They did infrastructure changes, and we also have had a wave of wind power developments, the development of wind parks that has from a rural or a local perspective has been a centralized power forcing forcing their will, and the result is a lot of local conflicts because the locals don't want these wind power parks. The sum effect of this has kind of spurred these rural protests because no central agency has monitored the sum effects of all these national reforms. So in reality, they have had a centralization effect and a sum effect that has harmed particular areas in Norway. They have been hit hard. In 2019, my colleague Jostein Vik called this excuse me, a greedy state, where the state withdraws from local and rural areas. The effects of these reforms have been the loss of jobs, loss of services, and heightened barriers for access to public services and public jobs. But at the same time, the state has not decreased neither in size or in power. Sorry, one. So we wrote a book about this, and also we had a national conference in 2020 looking into this. These local protests, they resulted in a massive increase in support for political parties in the center and to the left that are so-called rural leaning or are more rural positive than the conservative government. And in the 2019 local elections, it was a landslide, and they increased massively in support. The response from the conservative government then was to introduce 2 white papers where they looked into business development and demographic changes in the districts. And they introduced a youth panel that should advise national politicians on matters linked to growing up in rural areas. They also added an extra minister for rural affairs and digitalization. But the election result from last year told that this was not enough, as we shall see, since we had a change of government. But anyhow, these rural protests and the conservative government's efforts to try to meet these protests, it has resulted in an increased focus on rural matters. More rural voices have been heard, and also it's created a reawakening over what I would call a latent conflict axis in Norway. Between the center and the periphery, described by social scientist Stein Rokkan. He started his work in the 1970s about this. And this central periphery conflict axis is relatively constant, and if it's triggered by events, it resurfaces, as it has been doing since 2018, 2019. So the 2021 election, we are having a change of government now. It's a center left-wing government with the Labour Party and the Centre Party. That used to be the Farmers' Party. They are in government now. They mainly addressed rural issues. They have focused on center periphery challenges. and the center party that used to be the Farmers Party, as I say, they already had high credibility as owner of solutions. And on the municipal level, the center party holds a lot more mayors than the size on the national level should indicate. So these two parties both addressed the rural challenges and also promised a lot of solutions. Now they have a new program out. We still need to see whether their promises will be followed up, but at least they have addressed rural issues from, what should I say, from a more rural or a district perspective, instead of having what the rural population would say, centralized opinions on rural solutions. So, so there's a kind of a dialogue going on here. And as you can see, this is figures for the center party since 2005. They always used to be a relatively small party, but since 2013, when we had the conservative government with that introduced all these centralizing or centralized national reforms, they have increased in size in every election since. And if we look at where the Labour Party and the Centre Party have its main support, it's in the darkest colored areas in Norway, as you can see. In southern parts of Norway, it's in the inland and along the Swedish border, and then in many electoral districts in the northern parts of Norway. And these are also the areas that mainly have been hit hardest by these national reforms. And these areas are also considered having the biggest challenges from some of the more major ongoing trends, development trends. So the new governmental platform that has been introduced now, the Conservative Party that is now in opposition, they have criticized the new governmental platform for being mainly rural. But I think that's the point of the new government, to have a more rural and political left turn in their policy. So they're gonna introduce more local self-rule, which means local municipalities will get bigger maneuvering space for local adaptation. So it's a more differentiated municipal planning, for instance, that takes more into consideration the needs and the challenges of the district municipalities. They will increase funding for the municipalities. They will introduce new regulation linked to wealth created from local natural-based resource development. And two examples are fish farming and wind power. We heard about that earlier today, about how to introduce regulation that will secure that more wealth creation is kept at the local level. Have also the new government have also promised to halt or reverse some of these national reforms, particularly within the police sector, and they are going to reintroduce some local courthouses. They want to reopen the maternity ward in Kristiansund, which symbolically is very important. And they also are looking into higher education sector and wants to almost force some of the universities to reopen or reopen shut down campuses or introduce education programs. That means they can establish new campuses in some of the districts, along what we heard from Denmark. Particularly the police reform spurred a lot of protest, particularly along the coast and in the northern Norway. The intention here was to quite opposite from in Denmark, as we heard, have fewer headquarters that would free up local policemen to be out in the field instead of doing administrative work at a lot of smaller headquarters in the districts. But quite the opposite has happened, as there are now a much longer response time in many districts, and some of the bigger islands with several thousand people has no police officer on the island, for instance, from Thursday evening to Monday morning. So these are the kind of local effects, perhaps unintended, from big national reforms that was now has been protested, and that the current government now wants to reverse. The current government also has decided to look into ferry prices, since a lot of the islanders use the ferry as their public road, and with the national transport reforms, some of the ferries became very expensive, and the number of ferries got reduced, which means that commuting and seeking up public services has become much more difficult for a lot of people, for instance. The government will also look into broadband fiber cables as a crucial national infrastructure, almost like electricity, which means that rural people will not depend on companies' capacity or interest in building broadband to remote areas, for instance. And they also introduced the concept of rural proofing, which they have looked into in the UK. Researcher Mark Chucksmith from Newcastle University has written a lot about this. And this will be a program where we should assess rural effects or district effects from all public reforms. And I think a reason for that is to avoid a series of national reforms creating very negative sum effects in specific areas in Norway. So to look more broadly on all public reforms. Some of the long-term regional and rural development trends in Norway are not particular to Norway, I would say, but some of them are, or at least they have a Norwegian kind of expression. And as planners and researchers, it can sometimes be difficult to tell which trend is either a result of new policy or can be affected by political means, and which trends are more long-term underlying and similar to other areas like the Nordic areas or in Europe, for instance. In Norway, in the 1990s, national reforms gradually started to reduce financing of particular rural policy instruments. And this has been going on across different governments. So this is a more long-term kind of economic trend where more general policies are put in place, and the particular rural-focused policies have been declining. And we have a trend of where consolidation and centralization of power and also capital within major business sectors have been going on. This is something that happens in the market and in the private sector, and is not always neither detectable or easy to affect politically. And then we have the urbanization and centralization trends that's just seem to keep going. The same with the agricultural restructuring, where we lose a lot of really medium-sized farms, and we have fewer and larger farms. And then we have the demographic trends that also can seem difficult to turn around, but there are policies in place trying to address them. So demographically, if we remember the maps from the Labour Party and the Centre Party, where they gained the most support, we can compare with this map to the right here. This is a map showing a national centrality index for municipalities, where the dark blue are the municipalities that are considered least central, which means they have people, they have harder access to some services, and they have a longer distance to the nearest urban or urbanized area. And these dark blue areas here and then both number 5 and number 6, the two most dark blue colors, they correspond to a high degree with where Labour Party and the Centre Party gained the most increase in support in the latest election. And these areas are considered marginal, and the major trend now is that the rather marginal areas are becoming more marginalized. So they are sort of losing out on a lot of areas, both linked to effects of political reforms, but also more overall major trends, which is now being addressed to a much higher degree on the national political level since the last election. More than half of Norwegian municipalities are experiencing a reduction in population, and 80% of the municipalities that are experiencing fewer people are in the northern parts of Norway, north of Trondheim. So these demographic trends are both kind of local, but they are also regional. And the main reasons or main drivers, I guess we are all aware of, where youth move out to get education. There's now an increased focus on massive reduction in childbirths, particularly in northern Norway, which is a concern. And also the COVID period has really shown how dependent Norway are from both immigrants and also migrant workers from the EU area. So we have gotten less of these population groups during the COVID period, and that hits the most remote municipalities the hardest. But that also raises a kind of a paradox, because in these municipalities with centrality 5 and 6 being the most rural municipalities, they also hold most of the natural resources. They have really a booming business sector, and they are also said to be the site for the green shift and new bioeconomic developments. We already have the oil and gas, we have fisheries and the fish farm sector. There's a majority of parties in the parliament that wants the fish farming sector to grow, and that's located in these municipalities in northern Norway and along the coast, where they also have low centrality. We're looking into more tourism, particularly eco-tourism or sustainable tourism in the future. The districts also hold is a base for raw materials and new products, and some of these products we don't even know about yet, but they're said to be important for bioeconomic development in the future. And then the latest development now is an increase in interest for establishing server parks or even battery factories, and the sites for these are in some of the more remote municipalities. But as I say here, lack of labor, particularly skilled labor, is already a problem, and it seems it will be an even larger problem in the future. And with some of these new developments, it's anticipated that land use conflicts and also conflicts between the rural population and local communities' interests and the more overall national interests will increase in the future. Linked to the question about labor, I could also add the public sector, as lack of skilled labor already has started to be a problem in both school districts and in the primary healthcare sector in some municipalities. And that has also been worsened during the COVID period, because in-migrating labor from the EU area has stopped coming. So it has, the COVID shutdown has kind of displayed a lot of rural vulnerabilities and future challenges in this area. Well, this might look like a really negative or painting a negative picture of rural development in Norway, but it's not all kind of pinch black, and there are a lot of positive developments taking place. As I said, we are rich in natural resources. We have enough capital and a national level to keep funding district political programs, and the private sector say they are positive towards the future if they can solve the problems with lack of people to take the jobs. That's really the big challenge, I would say. And some of the more specific policies I can mention. We have a program called the Merkur program that is aimed at local shops that get public funding for doing, in addition to being a shop, they host public and private service providers, so they can develop into a hub in the local community. And this is a government-sponsored program that is administered by the district center, a website linked to the right there. District center is a branch of the government that looks particularly into gathering research and knowledge and providing advice for district municipalities and local communities. We have also the urbanization trend that is politically supported. I could add the smart village here, looking into creating stronger and more sustainable rural centers, and giving some remote areas a more urban feel for those who seek that. There's also a program going on now where we are involved in doing research linked to a more realistic municipal public planning. So instead of focusing on future growth and kind of quantity, municipalities should look more into quality of life, sustainability, and current values. and also linked to this program is the opportunity. They hope that local municipalities can have easier planning requirements than a big city, for instance. So there can be a more diversified diversified planning requirements for rural municipalities, more adapted to the situation they are in.
Could you conclude in 2-3 minutes? Yes.
No, yeah, this I can skip the last few slides. I had a few examples of smart villages, but that's and
please take just too short about the smart villages. I think people are interested in that. So.
Yeah, just 2 local examples from the middle part of Norway, and they are linked to what we already have heard here. It's the village 2.0, Bygda Tunnel, Stokkøya, on the coast of Trøndelag, 2.5 hours from Trondheim, where they have created sort of a hub with co-working spaces. They have an artisan residence opportunity. There's a bakery. They have an upscale restaurant that draw day tourists from Trondheim. There's a project hub, and the whole village is involved in this. And they have been doing this for, I think, 10 years. Started as a local experiment, and now it has been kind of a national best example of how to renew a village and also see rural development in a different and more modernized way. And then we have the skiing site Oppdal, 2 hours south of Trondheim. That's a much larger place, but they have now just opened a co-working space that integrates a lot of services. Also with local innovation. Then they invite people to hold seminars, and you can rent a working space there. And the guy you see to the right, he moved his family to Oppdal, but he still works in Oslo. But he now was able to move to Oppdal and work from this new center during COVID. And when he was interviewed by the paper, he say, in this new smart village area, he has a lot of colleagues, but they have all different employers. So that's just a couple of examples of things that are going on at the moment. Okay, so thank
you so much, Josten Brobak. It was so many interesting things, but the time is running, and I really I think this rural protest, it's something that perhaps we should have in other Nordic countries also, and let's see where it will end up in the end. But and also the thing that you have now a more rural friendly government, and what will come out of that. So we will keep the questions to the end. We will now move to Iceland, and to the northern part of Iceland, to Akureyri, and we have Theoradur Bjarnason. I hope I pronounced it right. I don't know, but please, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much for having me. I guess I had a disclaimer similar to Jostein before he spoke, which is that my presentation is a little bit different from what we had before the break. And just for context, that in Iceland you have the Regional Development Institute that's responsible for rural policy and evaluation, and I do not speak for them, so I will not speak to that. We also have the organization called Landsbygdsområdena, which is a voluntary association of people interested in rural issues, for whom I also don't speak. So I'm coming at this from an academic perspective, and what I wanted to do was I wanted to talk a little bit about demographic changes in Iceland. And of course, demographics is only one part of the picture, but it's a little bit like taking somebody's temperature. that when you look at demographic changes, it tells you something about a lot of things that are happening underneath the surface. So I wanted to, in the first half, just show you some colorful pictures of demography. And then I want to talk a little bit about what this may mean for us, but for all of us, not only in Iceland, but the changes that are happening in rural communities. This is a representation of the urbanization of Iceland. So it's a long perspective. We're looking from the 1880s. This is 90s there, but it's 1880s until today. And what it shows us is it kind of has the different types of communities stacked on top of one another. So the big orange there on top is the Reykjavik capital area. And you can see that the whole population of Iceland has grown massively. It's still a very small country, but it used to be way smaller, right? So in the end of the 19th century, there were about 70,000 people in the country, and now there are about 340,000. So still small, but much bigger than it used to be. You can also see that much of this growth is the growth of the capital area, this orange bit. But what I'd kind of like you to do is, my cat is here, I'm sorry. What I would kind of mentally subtract the orange here and look at the rest, which is, rural Iceland or non-metropolitan Iceland. And what we see there is that even if we subtract the capital area, we do not have absolute decline in other areas. But these other areas differ, and the green on the bottom, these are the sparsely populated or the farming communities of Iceland that used to be just about everybody and is now a very small fraction. So what's in between the orange and the green, those are different types of urbanization or micro-urbanization. These are ex-urban areas that are kind of within an hour's drive from Reykjavik, regional centers, villages, and so on and so forth. So when we talk about urbanization in Iceland, oftentimes we focus on the capital area versus the rest. The capital area is growing, but once we dig a little bit deeper, we can see that urbanization in Iceland is much more profound than that, because you also have the urbanization of the rural areas. And of course, we get into very interesting conceptual difficulties here, because what happens if you have rural growth? You end up calling it urban, right? So urban is almost destined to decline, because anytime you have growth, you end up calling it urban. But that's I'm not going to go into that. What I want to do, however, is to kind of look at these different types of communities around the island. And starting with the capital area, that just very briefly, the orange now is Reykjavik, and the rest are the suburbs or the adjacent municipalities. And we can see that there's steady growth over the whole period. First only the city, and then kind of as the city area fills out, you have the suburbs growing. When we move beyond this, so this is what is really one continuous city, even though it's divided into several municipalities. Beyond that, 45-minute drive, something like that, from Reykjavik, you have what would be called ex-urban areas. So they used to be fishing towns that are now part of kind of the it's not part of the city, but it's very much hinterland, right? So you have commuters, you have all sorts of things going on because the city is so close. Is it rural, not rural? Well, it's a different type of rural, at least. And there you have very strong growth, right? So these areas that are, connected to the city, physically close to the city, there you have massive growth. So when you're talking about development of rural Iceland, we have to look at this as a separate category. When we move away from this area, we move further out, and we look like up here in the north where I am, where you have the Akureyri, which is a small town in most places, but pretty big for Iceland, about 20,000 people. You can see the same type of rural urbanization, right? That Akureyri is now more than half of the whole north of Iceland. And we can see that there's this, similar growth in Akureyri as you see in Reykjavik, just on a different scale. Even if you look at this picture, you see the dark red on top. This is like a tiny ex-urban area for Akureyri. And you can see the other towns in the north kind of holding their own, but Akureyri kind of taking this urban lead in the region. When we look at other towns with kind of the regional centers, which in Iceland typically have 3,000 people, 4,000 people, 5,000 people, something like that. What we see here is that they grew very quickly for most of the 20th century. And it's only towards the very end of the 20th century, in the 1990s, that there are this growth stops. So if you take a very narrow time frame and you look at like 90s to the first years of this century, you can see a little bit of decline, but mostly what you see is these regional centers stabilizing. Right? So then I want to move from these centers to the smaller places, to the villages, to the fishing villages, to the small towns that are kind of beyond this. And there you see, again, something a little bit different. You see the same kind of growth up to the late 20th century. And then you see quite a bit of a change. And a lot of this is the restructuring of the fishing industry. You get that cute little pyramid there. There was like this major development out east that had kind of temporary boom effects. But basically what we have here is we have these small villages after this sustained period of growth, 10, 15 years of decline, you have something that looks like stability. Right? And then if we go to the lowest level, so we look at the farming communities or the sparsely populated areas, which in Iceland as everywhere else is kind of a residual category, because yes, the farmers are there, but also whoever doesn't live in a town kind of ends up in this this residual category of sparsely populated. And there you see this steady decline in population all the way up to the to our century. And again, you see something that looks like stability. And so you see that just as in the villages and the towns, even these sparsely populated areas, the population decline has stopped. And you even have very modest growth. And for us that have been tracking this for a while, when something like this happens, the first couple of years, you think, well, I'm not going to say anything about this. This may just be a blimp on the screen. But now we've had several years where something seems to have fundamentally changed in the demographic trends, that all types of rural areas have stopped declining, and they even have very modest growth. And then you ask, okay, so what's going on here, right? And if you look at kind of the primary industries in Iceland, farming is basically sheep farming and dairy farming, and we have the fisheries. A little bit of growing stuff, but mostly the thing that grows best in Iceland is grass. So farmers basically are growing grass and making protein out of grass by animals. But here, like everywhere else, we have technological changes that have decreased the need for labor. And kind of the old farmers joke of saying, yeah, well, the cows don't milk themselves, really doesn't apply anymore, because the cows literally milk themselves. You have the robots where cows go and the robots milk the cows. You have jobs that, a lot of these fishing villages that were very dependent on the fish processing plants. This has become automated. So there are fewer and fewer jobs to be had. And people will say, yeah, but at the same time, new jobs were created, high-tech jobs, marketing jobs, stuff like that. These are urban jobs. So these primary jobs have been lost. And there are fewer and fewer people working in agriculture and working in the fishing industry. but still something seems to have turned around. We still have the population decline has stopped, and we have population growth. And there are, like was mentioned with Norway, you do have developments like the fish farms that have been important in certain areas. You have some development in like heavy industry, energy intensive industries that have had a little bit of an effect. But then maybe, one of the clues here, one of the big changes is the tourism boom, right? The tourism boom has been very important for many parts of the Icelandic economy, both urban and rural. And what draws tourists to Iceland, I guess, is, to begin with, it's nature, right? And some of this has been, there's been these debates about, the development of tourism where you concentrate, both, lodging and food and entertainment in the city, and then you take tourists on buses out to the rural areas where they will, come and look at waterfalls or something. Then they come back to the city, and people ask, so what's in this for the rural areas, right? But you also have changes where, people have moved from kind of, the extraction industry to an attraction industry, where you have, instead of hunting whales, you can make much more money showing whales. Having tourists, taking tourists out on boats and so on. You do have these kinds of changes, even with like the dairy farming, where now the cows milk themselves, so you have a lot of time on your hand. You have this kind of touristy, bringing tourists in to look at cows and eat some cow while you look at the cows, right? You also have a little bit of this, what would be called like culture tourism, the idea that you can bring tourists out into the rural areas to see some kind of representation of authentic rural Iceland. And it's Disneyfied, right? It's very Disneyfied, very, a fishing harbor is not a place for tourists. It's loud, it's dangerous, it's dirty, it's a workplace. Once you have restructured it into a tourist attraction, and you've built, you put in cobblestone streets, and you've painted it pretty, and you made restaurants, it's a very nice space to imagine that you're kind of in an authentic fishing village, but it's something new. And I think it bothers academics. For the locals, oftentimes they'll say, well, why not? It's well paid. It kind of beats the old times anyway, right? So you have these changes in a lot of rural Iceland where people have been kind of rethinking and repurposing things that they had. So you have, the old freezing plant being the freezer hostel, right? You have the old slaughterhouse being a microbrewery. You have fishermen who cannot compete with the high-tech industry of fishing that will take tourists out fishing, right? So you have a lot of that going on, but you also have these changes where people have been making these centers of innovation and government institutions located physically in the same place. So you have these often old fish plants that have been repurposed. So now there are government agencies of different types. There's research centers. You have, in a small town with 2,000 people, you may have a place where, 20 people are working on things that are related to innovation, and you have these. You kind of get this critical mass of people that bring new things to life, and this has been happening. But I think the most interesting and important thing is that, being on the cusp of this, what is popular to talk about as the fourth industrial revolution, right? Or the fourth phase, or whatever. These changes that are happening right now where, I mean, it's not as if people don't have to show up for work anymore, but what has been happening is that more and more people are less and less connected to a specific workplace. There are more people that can come to work a couple of times a week, or they can be, they can work for a period of time, they can move around. And you also have, when you look a little bit further into the future, you have, I guess there are like two possibilities. One is that more and more work will be, not bound to place. Some people will say, we may be looking at a future where work disappears altogether, where our norm of a life of working 36 hours a week is going to pass. Or people say, well, not exactly, but it may be that it's going to be much more flexible. And I think this is so important when we think about rural areas, because all the way up to now, the whole of human history, we have had to live where we can provide for ourselves. So a lot of places in rural areas grew up because there was work to be had. There were wages to be earned. You could support a family. And a lot of the most miserable urban hellholes, industrial hellholes, were created for exactly the same reason, that people would move there because there was work to be had. So if, like it looks like, if we're on a cusp of changes where people will no longer have to live where they can make a living, where will they choose to live? And we, of course, we don't know, and the answer is going to be different. It's going to be different according to age. You're going to have, people at certain ages wanting to be where there's a lot of other young people. You have people that are with young children that will be looking at what is the best place to have a family. Or you'll have, a little bit older people that may be more interested in, either theater or golf or, whatever. So I think we are going to see a lot of changes where the future of rural areas are going to be determined by livability. How good a place is it to live? And I think we're still a little bit fixated on this idea that the future of rural areas is going to depend on creating jobs. And I think we're looking at a future where that's going to be less and less of an issue, and livability is going to be what determines the future of rural communities. So that's my spiel. I guess I'm good on time, eh?
Yes, thank you so much. It was really interesting, and I really agree with you. I also think that this connection to the working place will be less and less, and this the good life and the livability, as you said, or habitability also we are using in some projects here in Finland, will be something that really will raise up here. So thank you so much, and if you have questions, please keep them to the end. We will now move back to Finland, and now we have traveled around here in the Nordic countries, and now we will come back to Finland, and we will see what is going on here in Finland, and also share some thoughts from a Finnish aspect. And we have two speakers. It's Leena Antela from the Ministry of Agriculture and Forestry, and also Teemu Hauhia from the head of this Finnish Rural Network. So I think, Leena, you will start. So please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. It has been very inspiring to hear what is going on in the other countries. I can see that we have very similar themes going on in the rural areas, but also different ways how to handle them. And is Alla going to share my presentation, or my and Teemu's presentation?
Yes, Leena, just a second. I will put it on.
So I'm going to speak shortly. My presentation is also quite from different angle than the two previous presentations, but I'm going to speak briefly what is going on in rural development in Finland at the moment. For the first in the EU-funded rural development, that I'm working with myself, and then about the national rural policy. And then finally, I have picked up some themes that are high on the agenda at the rural development in general in Finland at the moment, and reflect a bit what has been spoken earlier today. So next slide, please. Yes. Okay. So at the moment, we are at the ministry, we are working with the CAP strategic plans for the next programming period, and they should be submitted to the Commission by the first day of the next year. So we are quite busy at the moment. Before that, they have to be approved by the government, and before that also by the government in Åland Island. Then we have the applications for the next programming period leader groups also going on. It's a kind of two-stage application round, and now the first stage has been submitted already, and the applicants will get some feedback still this month. And at the moment, there are also calls for EU recovery funding, which are in the current rural development program, especially on broadband agricultural investments, rural businesses, and European Innovation Partnership. And then there was the Rural Vision 2040 that was published by the Commission in summer, and it has been discussed in the Finnish Parliament during the autumn also. So next slide, please. At the National Rural Policy and National Rural Policy Committee arranged the Rural Parliament that took place in end of September as a hybrid event, and there were almost 1,000 participants in the virtual platform, and as much as 3,000 viewers on live stream during the event. And the National Rural Policy has also a new program that has been approved this year, and the English version is coming soon. Then next, please. We have also National Island Policy program, which is also new from last year, and it has 5 themes that they especially want to develop on connections and transport, housing, children and young people, industries and services, culture, and then nature and environment. And the next, please. And what is also new is a parliamentary working group on sparsely populated areas, and they have approved its action plan this summer, and which has 4 focus areas, which are vitality of the rural areas, schools and education, multi-locality, and long-term needs for legislation changes. And should be one back. Is there not this current themes? Okay, then one slide is missing. What has happened to it? I'm sure it should have been, but anyway, I was supposed to talk about some current themes and discussion in the rural development at the moment. For the first is the multi-locality and remote and hybrid working, which is due to COVID, and as also was mentioned in Denmark and also in some kind of Iceland, and which is also now in the agenda of the Nordic Council of Ministries new program during the Finnish chairmanship this year. This is due because many people have spent a lot of time in their second homes during the COVID crisis, and now the kind of a change is going to happen, that how and where you work in the future. That, like some other people said today, that people are not so keen to work at the office every day anymore, but rather we go more and more to a kind of hybrid model where you spend part of the time at the office and part of the time wherever you want to doing your work. Then it's very much high on agenda is also place-based policy, that the policy making should take into account the local conditions, and this is maybe also quite near the smart villages, which is also going to be at our new CAP strategic plans. And like we heard that smarta landsbygder is also very much in agenda in Sweden and also in Norway. Then access to broadband. This is actually, this COVID crisis has made it very much more visible also to the politicians that broadband is really needed everywhere in Finland. And there are, in rural and sparsely populated areas, there is not necessarily possible to have it in economical terms, or the companies don't want to build them. So you need public support for that. And as we heard that also in Denmark, this is out now in the government agenda as well as in the Norway. So the same themes there as well. And then digitalization in general is also very much discussed about the services and for the services and businesses, for example. And of course, environment and climate change becomes more and more important, and it's very much discussed at the moment. And this is also through this new recovery funds of the European Union and the just green transition that is also in the agenda of the Nordic cooperation. And like we heard in Denmark, also village sustainability and green energy is under development or discussed there very much. Then it was very interesting to hear about this, what is happening in Denmark, that after centralization, you now go back to decentralization, as well as seems to be the same trend in Norway. Because like this is also, the centralization is a long-term development term also or trend also in Finland. So we will see how and when we also go more to the other direction. I think there are also some signs of it here as well. And of course, demographic change is very much a topic as well in Finland, in the rural areas, and the trend is the same, I think, in all rural areas in Finland. I think that was the main things I would like to say about the general themes, and then you can go further to the next slide, which is for Teemu.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Lena. It might be that I'm guilty of destroying one of your slides, because I was adding this one picture after yesterday, but we will update this final presentation, so you will you can read more about those themes Lena was mentioning. First of all, thank you very much for all the presentations. It has been very interesting to hear what is going on in all the Nordic countries, and I think we have to continue these kind of webinars in the future as well, because it's very interesting to hear how we are developing our rural areas in the Nordic countries. Here is the picture of our rural network. I will very shortly explain. You heard about a Swedish presentation of how the Swedish network is structured, and our network in Finland, it's structured a little bit different, because we have a open network, and all the issues and things what we are doing in our network is connected somehow to our rural development program. Open network means that all the actors, organizations are automatically members of our network, if they are somehow involved in our rural development program. That means that if you are a authority, if you are a stakeholder, if you are even the possible applicant of some support in RDP, then you are counted as a member of our open network. But how we steer and how we coordinate our network, we have steering group which is led by a Ministry of Agriculture. The steerperson of the group comes from there. Then we have under the steering group thematic groups which are very closely connected to the steering group, because that is the way how we want to activate more members even to steer our network activities. And the third point is that we work more national and regional level, not so much with the local level. I mean, like if we talk about like agricultural support, when we are organizing education training in our network, we want to train more like this level who is bringing this information to the local level or to the applicants support seek.
Ann-Sofi, is it just me or did we lose Teemu?
No, I also missed him. I just checking. Was it my internet connection? But I think
I'm back. Yeah, I heard some noise here back home, and then the connection was down. So after this presentation, I have to go and check out what was it. But I will continue. Yeah. What I was saying, that our main target group for the training is those who
No, we lost Teemu again, I think.
Looks like that to me as well.
But I think he tried to say that you are focusing more on the regional level and not so much on the local level, because you train people on regional level to train
Exactly.
and advise people at the local level. But let's see if he will come back or
yeah
not.
yes
No,
now there's something is happening now, because my connection has been very steady, but now somehow it's kind of it don't want me to speak. Okay, so those thematic groups, we have the themes for 2 years, and we have 2 to 4 thematic groups which has been through the programming period. And then of course the main things what we do as a national network, we have a strong communication, a strong training and also facilitation of a training in our among our members. And then we want to network our members very strongly, because of that what we have found out, that when we have a strong network, we really can be effective with the rural development. And then of course sharing good practices, and the fourth issue is that our international connection, we want to be strong with that and share also our examples and pick up very good examples from all over the Europe. I think time goes on, so that's for the moment, and hopefully we can organize another webinar where we can tell a little bit more about what we are doing in our network. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Teemu, and also thank you so much, Lena. And as you said, both of you, that this at the ministerial level and also the regional level and the local level, we are now very much involved in this upcoming CAP strategy, of course, but of course the Nordic cooperation is also a very important part, as I also mentioned in the beginning. I see they are not in opposite. They are in a parallel way that we can also create and be in the front line in the Nordic cooperation, and also of course we have to be a part of the European Union, many of us. And also as non-EU members, you are also influenced and affected in some ways of the EU policy. But the time is running, so first I want to say some very big thanks to all of the speakers. I think it has been really a great inputs for all of you. It was so many interesting things, and I have myself working with rural development, I think, in 20-30 years, and now I should say it has never been so interested like it is now, because now it's like all the we have thrown up all the balls, and now also what will comes out of this post-COVID-19 and all these values and trends and whatever. We should not count out the ruralities, and we should also count in them in this development of this sustainable society. And I think also we have much to do at the rurality sector, and also of course in smaller villages. But is there any comments or reflections from the audience? So please, I hope you can stay some minutes, so if you can take the floor if you want to say something or to ask something, or just to have some reflections. I see some thanks here in the chat, and also Minna has mentioned this project about the habitability that I mentioned shortly, and also Theodore had put the name of the Icelandic organization that he mentioned in the beginning. But you could also send later of course to me or to the Finnish Rural Network. We are in a cooperation. As I said in the beginning, I'm the chairwoman of this thematic group that we called Smarta landsbygder in the Swedish-speaking part of Finland, and also in cooperation with the Nordics. And of course, I'm very happy that we managed to arrange this webinar in the end. It was we had postponed it a little bit, but in the end I think it ended up very well. And it was so many interesting things that I really hope, as Teemu said, that we should remain to a kind of webinar or even a bigger Nordic conference if we can hope we can really meet, because we have so many things to learn from each other. We have same challenges, we have same possibilities, but we also have different aspects on this, and together we will be stronger, and also we can really be interesting group when we also can plan the future and get into this sustainable future for rural aspect. So once again, I really want to thank all the speakers, and also thanks all the audience. We plan to have this more bilingual, but when we also get so many interest from the Baltic states, so we changed the language to be more English, because then many more of you have had possibility to take part in this webinar. So I hope it was okay that we use mostly English in this webinar. So and Sala also post here in the chat where you can reach these PowerPoints, and also you can also listen to this seminar 2 weeks after, not more because of this GDPR restrictions. But anyway, there are some possibilities to follow it also a little bit later, and not to share to friends perhaps that could not attend today. I don't see any questions, so then I will not prolong this webinar. Once again, big thanks to all the speakers and also to your participants that wanted to learn and listen to what we are doing here in the Nordic countries when it comes to rural development. I wish you all the best, and let's hope also to see physically someday, but at least I also hope that this seminar was kind also a starting phase for networking together, so perhaps you can also contact each other after this webinar, and you get some names and also some organization, and that is a good starting for a bigger collaboration and a bigger networking also when it comes to rural issues. Så ett jättestort tack till er allihopa från min sida. Jag hoppas att ni alla har tyckt det har varit jätteintressant, och naturligtvis så tar jag gärna emot feedback från er allihopa. Kan skicka till mig, och har ni mera funderingar kring nya tankar och idéer så är ni varmt välkomna att också kontakta mig. Thank you so much and take care.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.